All right. So I suppose by way of introduction, this course is kind of being offered and supported, and it certainly was developed with a combination of two entities. So myself, I'm a lecturer in biochemistry and cell biology in University College Cork. I'm also attached with the School of Pharmacy. So adult education in UCC, in combination and partnership with Biopharmaceuticals Skillnet, set about developing this particular course. I suppose it's nearly 3 years ago at this stage. And it follows on the best part of, I guess, 10 years that I've been associated with developing and delivering courses specifically relating to the biopharmaceutical industry and biomanufacturing. But this one here, it's a 10 credit module that's delivered, and once you complete the course and pass the assessments, you can then graduate with a certificate in continuing professional development, CPD, and introduction to biopharmaceuticals and advanced personalized therapies. And in many respects, there are two web pages that are associated with application for this particular course, and I'll explain to you a little bit later how that works in terms of eligibility and possibly funding support that is available for people applying either through Biopharmaceuticals Skillnet or through University College Cork, which has succeeded in getting HEA, the Higher Education Authority, is providing funding for these types of micro-credential courses, just like Biopharmaceuticals Skillnet is. So these are the links. So what I'll do is I will circulate this presentation to people afterwards. And I said there will be a recording that will be put up and people will be able to access this and review any of the information that I'm presenting to you. So I suppose just a little bit of background. We've obviously seen in the last 15 or 20 years this, I mean, I don't think it's an underestimate to say an explosion in biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical manufacturing in this country. We're all aware from the news headlines, you know, the kind of corporation tax that we get from these people. And I suppose it links in with a huge expansion in this sector in the last number of years. And there was a governmental report that was done back in, I think it was 2024, yes, which highlighted how there's going to be 21,000 new jobs required in this particular sector before 2027. Now, admittedly, this happened before there was a change in I suppose, policy in the US government in relation to, you know, manufacturing abroad. But certainly I would say that we haven't seen a lot of the negative aspects or problems that we thought that the sector could encounter following the new administration in Washington. So these companies are still hiring, they're still looking for people. There is a massive expansion going on. And coupled to that, there's now a number of new technologies and new medicines that are beginning to come online. So it really is a very exciting time in terms of the biopharmaceutical industry in general, and certainly in terms of opportunities here in Ireland. So what are the companies looking for at the moment? Well, I suppose it's twofold in some respect. They're looking for people that are going to be employed within the manufacturing industry. And at the moment, certainly this is the major output or the major opportunity for people that are working within the biopharma sector. And this involves the production of biological medicines. For the most part, this involves protein medicines. And we have manufacturing plants all over the country. I know that we're particularly fortunate here in Cork because we have a number of them located within the Ring of Skiddy area, but also Kinsale, we have Lilly. In Munster, broader Munster, we have Sanofi and Genzyme. In Waterford, we have Regeneron across in Limerick. But certainly throughout the country, we have you know, up in Pfizer in Grange Castle in Dublin, Amgen. There's lots of companies that have invested in creating manufacturing facilities in this country. So lots of opportunities in relation to that. And I suppose on the other side of it, shown over here on the right-hand side, is that there are these new medicines, these new technologies that are coming along that really offer huge prospects for individual health and the treatment of disease going forward. So what we set out to do with Biopharmachem SkillNet was to develop a standalone certificate in continuing professional development. It's delivered as a single 10-credit module. It is a part-time course delivered online, so it involves some pre-recorded lectures and materials and lecture notes that get distributed to you. But then there's also a weekly workshop tutorial where we discuss the contents of those lectures and really try to focus on some of the applications within the industry. It's developed during an 8-week teaching period with pre-recorded lectures. As I said, the weekly webinars are held between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. Those webinars are also recorded, so if it's not possible on a particular Tuesday for you to attend, there are still opportunities for you to access the material that was covered during those webinars. So the weekly webinar will be used to review and discuss the content delivered as part of the lectures and case studies, and the examination for this course is completely through continuous assessment, and that's all based on online assessments. So in terms of the specific content, what's described here in this slide is the learning outcomes for this 10-credit module. And what it involves is giving a bit of the background, the biological background to disease, first of all, and how we can design biological medicines in order to help treat those diseases. So our initial, I suppose, focus on the course is to provide some of that fundamental content and then describe the design and manufacture in the first instance of protein biopharmaceuticals, which, as I said, are the primary product that's manufactured in Ireland currently. As part of this, we discussed the importance of process management in the upstream and downstream processes involved in the manufacture. It all occurs within a very highly regulated environment, so we'll make some reference to that and the processes that are linked to that. This represents effectively the first half of the course. Then the second half explains the rationale associated with immunization and to discuss the novel approaches in the design and administration of vaccines. So this is something that we're all too aware of, really, following the events of the last number of years and the pandemic. But obviously, immunisation is something that's going to be central to public health policies going forward. And there's a number of very exciting new opportunities that are going on in relation to that. The course will then go on to describe advanced therapy medicinal products, what the industry calls ATMPs and combined ATMPs, so linking some of this with engineering approaches. And really, this is I suppose it represents what's going to happen and how the whole industry and how healthcare and treatment is going to change during the next 15, 20 years. And it really involves the personalization of medicines. So these advanced therapies are really about focusing medicines on a particular sick individual. And I suppose this is the realization that we've had during the last 50 years, is that different individuals respond differently to the same type of drug. But also for things like certain types of cancers, it's associated with mutations in a particular gene that an individual has. And a different individual may have a different mutation, which, yes, you may get a similar type of cancer, so it could be lung cancer or breast cancer or pancreatic cancer, but it is occurring as a result of a different type of mutation. So there's a requirement for a different or a personalized clinical approach to those two individuals. So we'll talk a bit about that. And also, I suppose, we will evaluate and discuss ethical and practical considerations in relation to the personalization of medicines. So, you might be familiar there in the last number of days of some sort of a court judgment in relation to a company called 23andMe, who were sequencing the genomes of individuals. They were storing that information, and there was some sort of an information breach. And there are certain ethical and practical considerations in relation to this whole personalization of medicines. So in terms of the course content, so the first part of the course will provide, as I said, a basic understanding of how our bodies work, how this changes in disease. It will then consider the rationale behind the development and design of biological drugs, with the emphasis on the process and process management involved in the large-scale manufacture of protein drugs and vaccines. And as I said, that really represents the vast majority of biopharmaceuticals that are being produced in Ireland at this time. So during week 1 of the course, we'll have an introduction to cellular and molecular biology. During week 2, recombinant DNA and protein technology, and then week 3 and week 4, how we make the drugs, and then how we purify and prepare the drugs to be put into patients. Then in the second part of the course, the second 4 tutorial webinars, students will be introduced to the concepts associated with the personalization of medicines, the novel applications associated with cell and gene therapy. So week 5, we've got personalization of medicines. Week 6, introduction to immunotherapies. Week 7, vaccination. And then week 8, cell-based therapies, principles and manufacture. Now, there's a lot of big words in that, okay? And I suppose what I want to emphasize at this particular point is that the course is challenging, but it is targeted to people that have no experience whatsoever in the molecular, the cellular, the medicinal, the health sciences, any of this, okay? So just to make you aware of that, don't be fazed by the terminology here. So in terms of the delivery and assessment that's on the course, there are pre-recorded lectures that are, as I said, released in advance with associated notes. Then on a weekly basis for 8 weeks, there are these 2-hour online webinar workshop tutorials. And from a university point of view, what we find is we would advise that as a total for a 10 credit module such as this, spread over 12 weeks, that there would be a certain number of self-directed and directed study hours associated with it. So this is a kind of an advised figure. So people that are thinking, you know, how am I going to balance this in life? You might look to that as a kind of a guide. So it's structured running from the end of September until mid-December with weekly webinar tutorials. What I found during the first and I suppose second iteration of this particular course was that it was difficult to be focusing on progressive material week in, week out if the quizzes were being held on the same days as didactic material was being presented. So what we have started to do now for the last 2 years is to introduce weeks during which we have these quizzes, which take only 15 or 20 minutes, but it just means that you can study some of the material and then prepare for that quiz before then moving on in the next week to new material. The entire course, the entire module is structured in such a way that when kids have a midterm break, we have a midterm break. So there is a written assignment there that I give you have 2 weeks to complete it. But it's just to mean that you're not obliged to attend a webinar during that particular week when there are other things maybe going on. So then back again for another 2 weeks, then another quiz week, and then finally there's a written assignment. In terms of the assessment, so all of this occurs through software that we have within the university. So this is an example. Hopefully you can all see it. This is an example of last year's Canvas webpage for this particular course. And you can see how, the students used to come onto this Canvas webpage every week and they would click the link for the Teams meeting. This is the tutorial. If they hadn't attended or were unable to attend, there was a link here for the weekly webinar so they could catch up on that material. Further to that, then the actual lecture content, the didactic content, was delivered in these different topics. You could click into these, and what this does is it presented pre-recorded lectures along with a set of notes that corresponded to the content of the lectures, and you're able to download that, print it out, and you can listen to the lectures if you want to do that on a Saturday morning on the side of a hurling pitch or whatever you're doing in life. All that material is accessible to you. There are also discussion boards. There are 5 of these that need to be completed, and these are linked to the lecture material that is released in advance of the tutorials. And I suppose the philosophy behind these discussion boards is really to encourage you. There's only, 1 or 2% of the marks for the module that are linked to these discussion boards, but encourages you to listen to the content, that pre-recorded content, so that you're as prepared as possible then when it comes to attending the Tuesday evening webinars, when it says we'll review that content, but we will also be discussing about applications of that content. So the discussion boards are really to encourage you to do that. But all of this is accessed, recommended text, indicative timetable, and certainly all this now links to last year's course. They haven't put up the more recent one yet, but it takes I suppose a very short period of time, I think, to familiarize yourself with the layout of this particular virtual learning environment, this VLE. But once you do, I think the information is all very accessible there to you. Okay, so this is our Canvas. In terms of the assessment is also managed through that Canvas webpage. So we have these Canvas quizzes, which are like MCQs. You're asked a question and choose from one of the possible answers. There are 2 of those. We indicated there's one of them here on the 6th of October. Then there's another one on the 5th of November. There are slightly different marks for those, reflecting the fact that there's different amount of content that's covered. There's a written assignment. So even though there's no practical training embedded in this course, I feel it's really important that people get an appreciation for how some of this theoretical material works in practice. So there are a series of videos that I generated when there's a biopharma training facility located in Carrigaline here in Cork. So there's an assessment linked to those videos. And then there's a written assessment at the end of the course that's linked to the second half of the course. This is the discussion boards need to be completed as you're going through the content on the course. And in principle, an oral exam can apply as well. So even though there isn't practical content embedded in the course, we don't bring people into the labs in UCC and get you to do practicals and stuff. I nevertheless am firmly believing that it's important to see the practical, applications of what's done in the lecture course as part of the theory. So as part of the course, we have an arrangement with NIBRT, which is the National Institute for Biopharma Research and Training. The philosophy behind the existence of this training is that lots of the companies that are present in the country, they send people there for a day or 2 days training, whether it be bioreactors or the advanced personalized therapies. So we take the students up and this normally occurs maybe the 2nd or 3rd week in January, so you will be able to attend that. It is optional. There is a separate fee associated with it, but depending on your application route, there may be financial supports for that. We can never guarantee it from one year to the next, but we also try to organise for a site visit so people can actually attend a manufacturing site where some of these biopharmaceuticals are being generated. In terms of eligibility for the course, there are individuals with a level 8 academic qualification at a second-class honours level in the science and engineering fields are eligible to apply. So people maybe with a microbiology degree or a biochemistry degree or any of these. But so too are those with academic qualifications from disciplines not traditionally associated with biopharma. So I suppose what we've really seen in the last number of years is the industry is looking for people with mixed experience. They're looking for mathematicians, they're looking for data scientists, they're looking for statisticians, computer programmers, and for them to have some exposure to and an understanding of what goes on in the industry. So we would strongly be encouraging people from those kinds of backgrounds to apply for the course. But so too are those with experiential or relevant professional learning, RPL backgrounds. So even those that don't have, third level university, whatever qualifications, but people that have been working in the industry for maybe 5 years or 10 years who are looking for promotional opportunities, we would also be encouraging them to apply to come onto the course. So applicants are invited from all levels of industry, and over the years we have had participants from all levels of industry, from operators to project leads to line managers, those looking for promotions to move within the industry. But we also get quite a lot of people that are looking to move into the industry, those data scientists, the mathematicians, the engineers, people that want to get some exposure and an understanding of what's going on. And I mentioned this to you previously, but I really want to emphasize it to you again. Applicants are expected from diverse backgrounds, including diverse academic backgrounds, and the delivery is pitched accordingly. When I set out my lectures from one week to the next, it's on the basis that, you've covered the material that has been the pre-recorded material that has been sent out to you, but it is on the understanding that there are people present who don't have a background in biological or life sciences. Okay, so I'll emphasize that again and again, and I know that there are some testimonies from previous participants on the web pages which speak to that, that it is doable. The content on this course, you need to review the lectures, you need to engage with the course, but it is doable for people that are not coming from that traditional background. So in terms of application, there are a number of different routes which you can apply through. The first, I'm just going to refer to, it relates to University College Cork. So there is a particular web page run by Adult Continuing Education that describes the course. Key takeaways, most of what I've already spoken to you about now this evening, practicalities, why you would choose this course, and in terms of requirements, in terms of English language requirements, in terms of relevant professional learning. And I suppose one of the key things, depending on the application route that you choose, there are, I suppose, different access points for that. So this yellow button up here, so see funding and application route button above, if we click on that guy, it summarizes the different application routes. So the first application route that is put up here is if you apply through Biopharmachem SkillNet. And in this case, this is a subsidized route. So it's available to eligible applicants employed in or connected to the biopharma sector. It's for employed applicants, and funding can only apply where the employer pays the course fee on behalf of the student. So when this happens, you get a reduced fee of €875 rather than the €1,250, which is the full cost of the fee. Self-employed applicants can avail of the subsidy, and Biopharmachem SkillNet will invoice the employer for that €875, and it is limited to public sector and companies are within Ireland. That public sector and companies outside the Republic of Ireland are not eligible for this particular subsidy. But this is the link, and I'll go to that also in a moment. The second route of application involves a micro-credential learner fee subsidy funded route, and in this case, the HEA, the Higher Education Authority, will provide 80% of the fee to eligible applicants. Applicants must have lived and are working in the EU for at least 3 of the last 5 years. Eligible applicants pay a subsidised fee of €250. So priority may be given to unemployed applicants and those returning to education, but there is a link here that is accessed through the web page that I was on a moment ago that will give you further details in relation to that application. It's done through what's effectively called the Springboard program. So some of you may be familiar with that particular program. It's an EU funded program within the government structures to support upskilling and reskilling of individuals. So I says there are these two application routes which provide real tangible financial support to people coming on these courses. It is my understanding that the HEA, this micro-credential one, at the moment, we've only gotten funding for 15 places. Okay, so just I'm putting that out there. I would encourage people to apply for that funding if that's how you want to apply to this particular course. The closing date on that, I believe, is the 31st of July. This is in contrast to the Biopharmachem SkillNet subsidised route, which I said is limited. There are certain restrictions there. And this will involve, invoicing the employer. But I says for people that maybe don't want their employer to be aware of the fact they're taking a course, or then certainly the micro-cred funded course is a real opportunity. The third route that we have is direct UCC applications. So applicants that are not eligible for a funded route may apply directly through UCC. In this case, the program fee is $1,250, which I'm given to understand. I tend not to get involved with the financial side of these things, but I understand that is kind of going rate for these types of postgraduate courses. But to be aware of and encourage you to apply through these funded routes. So this is the UCC web page. How to apply here, it'll take you through to the web page, which says links to the Springboard web page. In contrast, if you wanted to apply through the Biopharmachem SkillNet route, again, there's a different web page that's associated with that. So again, duration, it talks about it gives a specific breakdown on the funding that's available for people that are applying through that particular route. You can view the timetable and you can essentially register your interest and actually make an application through that route. Okay, so those are the application and funding routes associated with it.